to have a refresher, let's just look at it at the through the lens of three questions that experts always ask whenever we see another variant, whether that be a variant of concern, of a variant of interest, or a variant under monitoring. So, first of all, the transmissibility of Omicron. This is really its biggest threat right now. It is extremely contagious. It is already, if I'm not mistaken, around 2 to 3 times um, more infectious than Delta, which we already know it was much more infectious than the original COVID-19 strain. And because it's so infectious, this is why you see cases really exploding. Here in the Philippines, the Department of Health said that um, the like the way Omicron spreads so easily, it's translating to cases doubling every 2.2 days. That's really, really fast. And the implication, of course, uh, of extreme contagiousness and transmissibility is that it is so much harder. It's that much harder to contain COVID-19. And the threat or the risk of the chances of you getting infected is that much higher because um, that it spreads so easily. And I think that you and I know that firsthand. Of course, people here watching also know that firsthand because you have not just one friend or one family member, but you have several people who are testing positive. And right now in Metro Manila, around one out of every two people, 50%, yeah, are testing positive. So that's on the first account of transmissibility. And then of course you also look at severity. Now I think early on, it's probably worth revisiting this question because early on, a lot of the news was revolving around the fact that Omicron seemed milder. But then we have to put into context, of course, that this is milder compared to Delta, which is not mild, and neither is less severe compared to Delta, which in itself is um, not severe, and Omicron itself also isn't mild. So we know that because it's still putting people in the hospital and it's still killing people, and so mm, you can't say that the virus is mild. It is less severe compared to Delta, and the reason why. But then you might ask, right? Like, okay, but if other people are getting infected, um, and again, you can't say for certain if it's Omicron because you'd have to sequence your sample. But let's just assume if it's Omicron, how come my symptoms are so mild if the variant isn't quote unquote mild? Well, if you're vaccinated, um, uh, one big reason why the infection isn't as severe as it might be is because of the vaccines and they're working in you. Um, Scientists are also still trying to really figure out what exactly might make um, you know Omicron less severe than Delta. Is it so? This is something that they're also still really watching. But then the bottom line here is that Omicron isn't mild. It is less severe than Delta, but it's still, of course, something that we need to be careful and something that we should avoid. We still should avoid getting infected as much as possible. And then the last question about a variant that experts always want to answer right off the bat is how does it affect our vaccines? And long story short, here, just a quick recap again, is that it does affect the performance of our vaccines, but we know that protection against severe disease is still intact, mostly because there have been some studies, preliminary studies that have shown that T cells, which is um, T cells are your body's way of killing infected cells, so and preventing an illness to preventing an illness from progressing into even more severe forms. So that still stays intact, and it still recognizes Omicron. So yes, there is somewhat of a dent in the performance of our vaccines against infection, but then that's also remedied by getting another dose with a booster.